All right, today in my storytelling playlist, I'm going to discuss some festivals centered around the Detroit area. I might do some of these for other places like Korea or Thailand or other places I've visited, but these are my hometown experiences in sort of the festival situations. So I'm going to discuss the different festivals a little bit, and I'm also going to talk about a few anecdotes of my experiences in them. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that used to happen once a month in Detroit way back around the turn of the millennium. And that is, there was a gallery, Detroit Contemporary, which was a very independent gallery, and they would have a lot of events and things. It was kind of like one of the centers of the bohemian part of Detroit, and monthly they used to have this thing called Funk Night, and it was probably I would say one of the best parties I've ever been to. And what they would do, because they were a gallery, they weren't really supposed to have these parties, but it's Detroit and there's a lot of burned out buildings, and the neighborhood that the place was in was very sketchy, so the police really didn't come around. I'm sure they knew about it, but they didn't really care. So they'd have these all-night parties, and they get like some kegs, and they charge admission. And to be honest, I kind of think that's how the gallery stayed afloat, because a lot of the artists they had in there weren't like big artists, or they were sort of underground artists. So I don't know how much money they actually made from the gallery proper, but these parties were packed full of people, and they were after hours, and it was kind of at the tail end of that sort of rave culture time. So, people just liked the mystery of it and like the exotic sort of against the rules aspect of it. But I will say I've never heard better music than at these parties. In dance clubs and stuff these days, sometimes there's music that is fun and you can dance to it, but the stuff that they played at this party was like really underground funk music, or very old funk music from the 60s and 70s mostly. And there's James Brown and things like that, but a lot of it was like deep cuts, and it was just such a driving, funky beat that like you couldn't help but lose yourself in it. And when you were there, like literally nobody was standing still. The whole place was dancing and having a good time. Sometimes they'd have like little performances and things, but mainly it was about dancing. And I've never danced like that in my life, even up to now, where I've been to many different clubs over the years and parties and weddings and things like that. That was definitely the most fun I've ever had dancing. And it was also one of the times where I've been in a place where everybody was just totally on the same wavelength. There weren't any fights. It wasn't. It was just totally focused on that one goal, and that was to get down. So it was really great. So that's the first thing. Second, I'm going to mention two very popular street fairs that are in the Detroit area. Now, there are many, but there's two I want to focus on. One is the Dally in the Alley, and the second one is the 4th Street Fair. The Dally in the Alley is the bigger one. More people, I think, are aware of that one. But the 4th Street Fair was more about like the neighborhood I lived in, closer to that. So like the Funk Night, it was a little bit more raw, and it was on 4th Street, and a lot of people lived on 4th Street, a lot of houses, and in these houses there were a lot of artists and musicians and things, and everyone kind of come out into the street, and people would sell things, but it was mostly like handmade things or art or some food, things like that. And it was definitely like a block party. It wasn't really a festival per se. It was very loose, and they'd have bands play, but like the bands are playing like in the front lawn of houses, And I saw a lot of great bands there. I remember this band, the Detroit City Council. I worked with one of the guys, Mike, at the Cass Cafe, and I just remember that band really rocking. And there were other ones, Slumber Party, all these local bands from that era. I don't think I ever saw the White Stripes at the Dally or the 4th Street Fair. I believe I saw them at Zoots, though, early on. But Zoots was a coffee shop that was kind of hopping as well in the scene. I think I saw Silver Apples there when they did a reunion, which was crazy. But the 4th Street was like very raw and very Detroit. Jugglers, all kinds of crazy things. A lot of people were on like psychedelics and walking around. All these anarchist kids were around. It was just a really wild time. The other one, the Dally, is similar, but it was much more organized, and a lot of the local bars and restaurants kind of had like were involved in sort of creating the booths and the different things. In fact, like many of the people that were involved with it were kind of like the managers or the who's who of these different locations around town, galleries and bars and restaurants. And some of the bigger bands would play there. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I saw the Von Bondies there at one point. But there were many bands, big stages, so it wasn't like the 4th Street Fair where they're playing on the grass. These were like bigger stages. And just a lot of cool stuff at that festival too. The last thing I want to mention is, and I have a little more of a story involved with this one, and that is the DEMF, the Detroit Electronic Music Festival, which was from 2000 to 2002, and I went to the first one, and that's where my story is. But eventually it turned into Movement Music Festival, and then Fusion, and I guess it's supposed to turn back into Movement in 2023. I'm not sure because I'm not in Detroit at the time right now. But anyway, I went to the first one, and it was insanity. It was probably one of the better large festivals I've ever been to, and it had a lot of Detroit techno artists, Carl Craig and a few other people. I think Richie Houghton was there. I don't really remember. I think so. But I went there with a few of my friends, and I don't remember who, but someone gave us like weed brownies, or maybe they were mushroom brownies. I don't really remember. But anyway, it turned into crazy experience because there were so many people there, and it was in Hart Plaza. It was in that sort of area where the stages and stuff. And I remember, like, once we were all kind of tripping, we would start like following each other through the crowd, and we're just like weaving through the crowd like almost like a snake. And we just kept doing that over and over again, all around. We were walking all over the place, and it was just, we were like in the same mind in some ways, just finding people we knew, or exploring things. The music was really intense and it was loud. The whole city, that part of the city was like shut down. I remember there being so many police, and it was almost the antithesis of what you imagine Detroit to be sometimes, because Detroit back in my day that I lived there was very empty. And so to see so many people, sometimes you'd see people at a football game or a baseball game or hockey game, but not to the degree that there was at this festival. It was super busy. But again, like the Funk Nights, I think everyone was there to really have fun, so it just really worked. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some festivals I did in Asia at a later date, and those I have more detailed stories for. But anyway, you can like this, hit subscribe, If you want to do the notifications, you can do that. And I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.